Right now, behind closed doors inside the White House, something is unfolding that could quietly reshape the future of North America in ways most people are not even beginning to grasp yet. And the reason it is so dangerous is because it is not happening through one dramatic announcement, one major speech, or one headline that everyone can react to in real time, but through a series of calculated decisions, private conversations, and strategic choices that are being made step by step, out of public view, with consequences that could take years to fully understand. Because this is not just another disagreement between allies, this is not just a trade dispute, or a military misunderstanding or political rhetoric designed to grab attention. This is a moment where one leader is actively reevaluating every alliance, every partnership, and every assumption that has defined Western cooperation for decades and deciding, personally, which countries still matter, which countries can be used as leverage, and which countries, in his view, need to be taught a lesson. And at the center of that calculation sits one country that has more to lose than almost anyone else: Canada, a country that shares the longest undefended border in the world with the United States, a country whose economy is deeply intertwined with American markets, a country that, for generations, has operated under the assumption that its relationship with Washington was stable, predictable, and fundamentally secure. That assumption is now being tested in a way it hasn't been in decades, and the outcome is anything but guaranteed. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand what is actually being planned behind closed doors, why Canada is in a far more vulnerable position than most people realize, and why the next 60 to 90 days could determine whether the North American relationship moves forward as a partnership or fractures into something far more unstable. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to what happened just days ago, because this didn't come out of nowhere. It built up, slowly at first, and then all at once. On April 8th, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte walked into the White House for what was expected to be a standard high-level meeting, the kind of diplomatic engagement where both sides reaffirm commitments, smooth over tensions, and present a unified front to the world. That is not what happened. According to multiple sources familiar with the meeting, the tone inside the room was unusually direct, at times confrontational, and shaped by weeks of growing frustration from the American side. Frustration that had been building ever since the Iran conflict escalated and key NATO allies chose not to support US military efforts. Germany refused to participate. Spain refused, Italy refused, and France didn't just decline involvement, it reportedly blocked the use of its military bases for US operations, a move that carried both symbolic and strategic weight. From Washington's perspective, this wasn't just disagreement, it was disloyalty. And that perception changed everything, because when that meeting ended, there was no attempt to quietly repair the damage behind the scenes. Instead, the response came publicly, immediately, and in a way that ensured every allied government would see it. Donald Trump posted a message that left little room for interpretation. He said NATO was not there when the United States needed them, and would not be there in the future. And then he added a line that has since been dissected by analysts, diplomats, and military planners around the world. Remember Greenland, for words. But in the context of everything else, they carried a message that went far beyond frustration. They suggested memory, consequences, a future response. And according to statements from the White House press secretary, this was not just emotional reaction. This was being framed internally as a test of alliance loyalty, and in that framework, NATO had failed. Now here is where the story becomes significantly more serious, because while the public focused on what was said, the more important question is what is being done. And according to reporting from major outlets, the answer is that the United States is actively exploring ways to reshape its military posture in Europe, not based purely on strategic necessity, but based on political alignment. There are currently more than 80,000 American troops stationed across European NATO countries, forming the backbone of deterrence and rapid response capabilities that have defined the alliance since the Cold War. Now, discussions are taking place about moving some of those forces not as part of a long-term restructuring plan, but as a direct response to recent decisions by allied governments. Countries that supported US actions could see increased presence, deeper cooperation, and stronger ties. Countries that refused could see the opposite: a gradual reduction, less coordination, more distance. And here is the critical detail. This does not require the United States to leave NATO. It does not require a treaty vote. It does not trigger an immediate crisis. It simply changes behavior. And over time, those changes redefine the alliance itself. Because a security guarantee only works if everyone believes it will be honored. The moment that belief becomes uncertain, the system begins to weaken from within. Now bring Canada into this equation, because this is where the stakes become much more personal and much more immediate. Canada is not just another NATO member, it is geographically tied to the United States in a way no European country is. Its defense, its economy, and its infrastructure are deeply integrated with American systems. But during the recent conflict, Canada made a deliberate choice. It did not send combat forces. It did not participate directly in military operations. Instead, Prime Minister Mark Carney emphasized diplomacy, international law, and de-escalation from one perspective. That is responsible leadership. From another, especially inside a White House that views alliances transactionally, it raises a different question. Did Canada stand with the United States when it mattered? And if the answer, even partially, is no, what are the consequences? Because those consequences are not limited to military cooperation. They extend directly into trade. And this is where the situation becomes even more complex. In just a few weeks, the CUSMA agreement, the framework that governs nearly $2 trillion in annual trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico comes up for review. Under normal circumstances, this would be a technical process. Adjustments, negotiations, extensions, but these are not normal circumstances. Trump has already signaled that he sees the agreement as flexible, even disposable. He has suggested it could be replaced, renegotiated, or broken apart into separate deals. And in a system where trade is treated as leverage, the question becomes unavoidable. If Canada is seen as unhelpful militarily, does it face economic consequences? Now here's where the story shifts again, because Canada is not simply reacting to these pressures, it is preparing for them. Over the past year, Ottawa has been quietly building a strategy designed to reduce its vulnerability and increase its leverage. On the military side, Canada has significantly expanded its focus on the Arctic, investing in infrastructure, surveillance, and joint exercises with European allies. This is not random. The Arctic is one of the few regions where the United States cannot operate effectively without Canadian cooperation. Geography makes Canada indispensable, and that creates leverage. On the economic side, the strategy is even more layered. Canada is reconsidering major defense purchases from the United States, including its planned fleet of F-35 fighter jets, while exploring alternatives with European partners. At the same time, it is expanding trade relationships beyond North America, strengthening ties with Europe and Asia, and cautiously managing economic engagement with China despite political risks. And then there are critical minerals resources that are essential for modern technology, energy systems, and defense production. The United States needs them. Canada has them, and Ottawa has been careful not to lock itself into long-term agreements, keeping that advantage in reserve. So what you have now is not a simple disagreement. It is a strategic standoff. On one side, a United States administration that views alliances through a transactional lens, linking military support to economic outcomes and expecting alignment in moments of crisis. On the other, a Canadian government that is trying to maintain independence while avoiding direct confrontation, building alternatives while still preserving the core relationship. And all of this is happening under a ticking clock. Because in the United States, the 2026 midterm elections are approaching, and the economic impact of these tensions is already being felt in key states. Trade disruptions, declining tourism, supply chain uncertainty. These are not abstract issues, they translate into jobs, prices, and political pressure. And political pressure influences decisions. But when you step back and look at the full picture, what you see is not chaos, it is structure. Two strategies unfolding at the same time. One fast, aggressive, and immediate. The other slower, more calculated, and built around long-term positioning. And somewhere in the middle of those two approaches lies the future of North America. So here is the question you need to think about, not just as a viewer, but as someone who will be affected by the outcome. If alliances become conditional, if trade becomes a tool of pressure, if long-standing partnerships can be reshaped in a matter of months, what does stability actually mean anymore? Because whatever is being decided right now behind those closed doors is not temporary. It is not a phase. It is a turning point. And once that turning point is crossed, there is no simple way back.